we be checking this out on Facebook?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's recorded, right?
But I think we may be live. So hello, everybody out on Facebook and YouTube. Excited. This is our first live with Crystal Canine, and I'm so honored to have my marketing support team here with me. I am Susan Briggs. I'm the fractional CFO for Pet Care Businesses, and so doubly happy that people are joining us to talk numbers and get have financial office hours. But again, my marketing support team's here. Ashley Holcroft helps me with social media, and Mike Linville is kind of like my fractional CMO. All things marketing works well with Ashley and all. And so we're going to be here as a team today. So if you are live, we would love to know you're out there. You can post a comment, post a question if you have one. And if you're there, we'd love to know that you're there. You can tell us where you're joining us from. I'm in Houston, Texas. So it's bloody hot right now in Houston and humid, but that's kind of Houston from June through September. And then I've got Ashley and Mike are both on the West Coast. So we
California.
Yeah.
It's actually not as bad out here now. It was like in the hundreds last week. Was kind of gross.
Yeah.
It's better.
It's better.
Did you get 102, Ashley?
No.
Okay.
But I'm a San Diegan, so.
She lives too close to the water for hundreds.
Yeah. The second it gets like a little bit too hot or a little bit too cold, people here are just like, we can't survive. It's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
Yeah.
That's great. So, all right.
So should we get started with some of the questions that had come in as people were signing up? Want to get started with those first?
Yeah, I think that would be great. And excited that we had several questions come in, and hopefully they're out there listening. If not, you'll be able to see the recording of this. So yeah, let's start with some of the submitted questions.
Ashley, do you want to go there? You want me to read those?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat too. I put Marianne's question. She asked how to increase profit.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's really what I want to help pet businesses do as a fractional CFO, because there are many different ways to increase profit in your pet business. Kind of starting at the basics of, how your business works. You can, it's a simple math, increase revenue and hold cost or expenses the same. That will increase your profit. Or you can, kind of hold revenue the same, reduce expenses, and that increases profit. But then for each of those, you can kind of dive deep. So if I want to increase my revenue, how can I do that? Well, we can raise prices. And I know we have several questions about that, so I won't go into it. Or we can, serve more dogs. And then as far as expenses go, the biggest expense in pet care is payroll. So really having good guardrails on your payroll is important, and that you're, fluctuating your schedule and your hours for people that are, providing services with the volumes that you have, and then kind of keeping everything else in check. So there are multiple ways to do it. And, every pet business is at a different place in time. And so, what's right and the best answer for Marianne may be different than it is for somebody else. So it's, that's why it's sometimes good to have, an external person kind of, look at your numbers, look at what your goals are, and can kind of direct you as to, these would be the top 3 things I would look at to increase profit. But I love that you're focused on it because that's what's going to raise your own pay and also make your business more valuable.
Mm-hmm. We also, Elaine asked, do I need to include depreciation in my QuickBooks records? If yes, how?
Okay. Actually, before we get into that, can I ask, do you mind if I ask a follow-up question?
No.
So are there benchmarks in terms of when we're looking at profit? Is there like a benchmark for where we should be profit wise?
Yeah, that's a great question. Follow-up question, Mike. And, for pet care industry as a whole, yes, the kind of profit levels that people are looking for that like to buy pet businesses is they really like to see 20% or more. Now, again, is 20% reasonable for your pet business? It kind of depends. It can depend on what your volume is, how long you've been in business, where you're at on that maturity level, even what mix of services you provide. But, there's a lot of private equity in pet care right now that are buying businesses, and kind of that 20% is what they're looking for. So that's kind of our benchmark. But if you're not there yet, it's not a failure. It's kind of like know where you are, and then we'll set goals and work to get better. It's not something that happens right away, but definitely with focus and attention on the numbers, you can make good progress.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then I'm just going to go back into the next question, because we've got a few that people just really want to know and have for you. Do I need to include depreciation in my QuickBooks records? If yes, how?
Okay. And that's a great question. It's kind of an advanced accounting question. And typically, yes, depreciation is included, but usually that's only done like after the year end. It's not usually anything that's added every year. And so I would actually say once your accountant, you've closed the books, even maybe wait until it's in your tax return. And then, the accountant can tell you the numbers, and, I hate to get into, bookkeeping debits and credits, but it's you want to set it up as an other expense for your profit and loss statement, and just have depreciation expense and put in one number. And then the other side of that entry is accumulated depreciation, which will show up on your balance sheet. So just putting it in once a year, once your accountant gives you that number, either after the books are closed or after the tax return, you can just, drop it in as a journal entry for the prior year. Once all those adjustments are made, close your fiscal year and move on. So hopefully that helps.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of little bit back to profit. This is more kind of asking, more about pricing, because this is something people are really curious about. Is Jennifer was asking if her prices are right for her business.
Yeah. And, Jennifer, that's a great question. And I work a lot with people on pricing. And again, this is going to be, the pricing does need to be right for your business. So the way you ask the question is right. And that, there's, in general, when you're setting prices, I want you to look at 3 different methods. Number one is probably the one that's used most often, is what are competitors charging in your area? And we're just going to, use that for kind of information. And when you're looking at competitor pricing, you want to make sure you're doing as good of an apples to apples comparison as you can, because in pet care, there's a lot of different ways to provide services. So, a business doing all day group play wouldn't want to compare prices to a competitor that's doing, small group enrichment daycare. That's not apples to apples. So you need to know a little bit of information about your competitor. So it's always good to kind of know where you stand against your competitors. But you also, and this, I think I may ask Mike and Ashley to chime in on after I finish this, is you also have to be cognizant of your brand and where you're reaching in the marketplace. So are you kind of a more high-end luxury brand and targeting, a upper middle class consumer, or, are you more, middle class? I want to be middle of the road, serving, as many as I can. So, you also have to know kind of where your brand is in the market. And then, so we talked about competitor pricing. Then there's, customer value pricing. What is the value of the services that you're providing to your customers? So this kind of gets into how much are people willing to pay. And, when you're really providing high touch, personalized care that are customized to each individual pet, people will pay more. So your brand would probably be reaching in, to that upper niche. But what's most important is the third way to look at your pricing, and that's looking at what does it cost me to provide the service, and I have to make sure I'm covering all my costs, plus I need to add in that profit percentage that I want. And so this takes a little bit of work. You really do need to understand your numbers, and you need to be able to divide your numbers out so that you understand the cost to provide services. And that's not just your labor, it's also your supplies. And there's a lot of supporting costs that will need to be spread across all your different services, because you need to pay for your marketing, you need to pay for your rent, you need, to pay for your insurance. And so cost plus profit is the best way to price to make sure that you are contributing and getting the profit that you want in your business. So I guess, Mike and Ashley, I am interested to know, like, from a marketing perspective, what do you recommend as people as they're really trying to decide who am I trying to target, and how do I set up my brand and align pricing? What's been your experience?
Yeah, I would say, Mike, do you want to go?
No, I was gonna say, Ashley, this seems like a branding question. This is all you.
Yeah. Okay. So this kind of, I think, coincides with asking like what content your audience wants to see. It's like that question of like where you sit, on a level of what your target audience is. It's the same thing. It's like people want to see, creating a brand. It's all about what your specific industry is looking for, right? Think about the questions that you're being asked when you talk to clients. You can go do some like target research and see what other people in your industry are doing. And creating a brand, it's all around just understanding your audience of like what people want to see is kind of lean towards the pain points that you see the most and then grow based off of that, right? That's kind of where your brand is at. It's like you are your brand. So think about all the questions that you get asked and create content around that from a branding perspective. And then Mike, if you want to add to it, anything you have to say too.
Yeah, I really like, Susan, I like that you started off with the competitors, because I do feel like that's always a great first step, is just to kind of see where you're at in the market and kind of see how everybody else shapes up. It doesn't mean that your pricing needs to necessarily be there, but if everybody else, just for, rule of thumb, is charging 50 and you're charging 70, then you just need to make sure that your branding is on point and that you have told people why it is that you're more expensive, because they're going to ask, right? Because they are going to know also. That's not to say that the market can't support a $50 option and a $70 option and even a $90 option. Like Susan was saying, like a lot of times when people are getting more of a hands-on, more of a personal experience, it's typically going to be a higher price point. So I think starting there is great. Figuring out what that delta is between what you want to charge or what you need to charge and whatever the market is, that's going to be ultimately your unique selling proposition. Like that's what makes you uniquely you. And then stick that in your pocket, because you're going to need that for all of your marketing.
Target research is so important.
Totally.
So important. But don't base your numbers off what other people are doing. And that's something that Susan and I have talked about a lot too, is you got to be exclusive to your business as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest mistake that I've seen people make is they'll set pricing based on what the competitors are doing. And then, the way they provide service, you may be taking dogs that are lodging with you out, 5 times a day, and your competitor is only taking out 3. Well, that's naturally going to cost you money because you have staff doing 2 extra trips out. And the other thing that, against competitor pricing is you don't know if they're making money either. So, the whole marketplace could be not really making money in their pet business because everybody's priced too low. So, and it is work to do the cost plus profit calculations. But once you do it and there's kind of a system to it, it's easy then to go through and kind of refresh that.
Right. I think this is a good segue into Heather's question too, because she was asking about how to price her fees to make a profit when starting her business and attracting customers simultaneously. Yeah,
that is a great segue in. And it's a little bit harder when you're first starting out because you do need, to get known in the marketplace. And so I would still do that competitor research and really, kind of understand the different brands and competitors around you, what they're offering, but also try to bring in something that's different and unique to the industry, as Mike said, you know, really know what is your unique selling proposition that's going to be different. Because there is definitely a lot of pets in the most geographic areas, and there is room for competitors. But start there. But then I would also kind of, hopefully you've done a forecast for starting your business. And so kind of use that pricing based on competitors and put that into your forecast and say, okay, at this rate, am I going to make money? And then I know it's hard when you're first getting started and you get open because there's so many things going on. But, you know, probably doing a check, you know, 6 months, 9 months in and saying, okay, you know, how am I doing against my forecast? Or is the revenue aligning our expenses? And, you know, don't be afraid to make adjustments. The biggest mistake I see pet business owners do is they wait too long to raise rates. And that's just hard. You dig a hole.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Susan, I know in a lot of other industries, when people are jumping into a market, especially if they're jumping into a crowded market, a lot of times what they'll do is early on kind of like basically buy the business, like undercut everybody else around to get the business, show them how good they are. And then, you know, over time do that. Is that something that you've seen people do? And if so, would you shorten that 9-month window to pricing to like 3 months or something? Because you can only go negative for so long, right?
Right. You got to know, you know, how, you know, much working capital you have. And definitely. And what I like is you can do some introductory offers. You know, maybe you're going to charge to do daycare evaluations, but as an introductory offer, you don't do that for the first 90 days. You may say this is regular price, but, you know, for, you know, your first lodging stay, we'll reduce it a little bit. The other thing is, instead of maybe reducing a rate, would be add in some extra perks that are kind of a bonus for, you know, trying you out. Because basically that's what you want people to do, is try you and see if they like you better than where they're going today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Find some of those high margin, you know, dog toys or something else like that you can send them home with, whatever it takes to make that good impression.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You know, and I like, you know, doing, you know, add-ons that are, or, you know, bonus perks that don't cost you money. So they're probably not labor related. Like you say, it's, you know, toys, treats, maybe even, you know, we're going to let you, you know, a nail trim. That's not a huge, you know, thing to give away. So yeah, finding things that are kind of a benefit that doesn't require a lot of labor or cost.
Yeah. And also like adding, because Heather asked about attracting customers too, share that process, share your story, but share it in a way where, you know, you're letting someone know this is what you'll benefit from working with me. You know, share the process of you trimming the dog's nails, or the dog going to the daycare or the resort, and how much fun the dog's having and how much time you get back, right, to be with your family. Share the story of what someone benefits from working with you as well, you know, what they get back from you ultimately. Yeah.
That's important. People love to see that kind of behind the scenes, as well as that their dog is happy. I think, you know, sometimes, you know, marketing is focused only on the pets, but I think research shows that people are attracted to people and pets together, that they're both happy more than just, you know, pet pictures.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think and I also think there's a bit of a transparency thing, like with all of the AI and all of the stuff that's going on right now. You know, people feel a certain way about it. Some people love it, some people not necessarily so much. But it also gives you an opportunity to really kind of make a connection with your prospects, right? And let them know this is who we are. This is why we do what we do and how we do it. And then let them make the decision if that's worth the money or not.
They're like, we're a person. We're not a robot.
Totally.
I promise.
We are here live for you, just to prove that we exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, it seems like dog daycares, I mean, there's so many opportunities for just great shots to share, right? Puppies enjoying themselves. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what people want, right? They want their animals to be well taken care of, and they want them to be happy. So if you can see dogs smiling and running and playing and chasing and, you know, eating treats and all the good things, gold.
It does the marketing for itself, really. You just got to put it together. You just got to put it together and you're good.
Yeah.
I think that's another. Oh, sorry, Susan.
No, I was just gonna say if we had any other questions, because time's flying. We're like 20 minutes in already, which is awesome.
We do. We've got another question. We've got one from Sonia, which is kind of a similar question. It's a lot about, when to raise prices now and how to calculate how much to raise them. So kind of coming back to doing it, yourself versus comparing.
Yeah. And I love this because, I remember when I was running my pet business, the best advice I got was, from someone who had been in business a lot longer than I have. And he said, Susan, you should be raising some price in your pet business every year. And that is so true because costs go up every year. And so, I'm kind of a little spreadsheet geek. And so I built me a little spreadsheet of all my services. And I kind of look at it as my core services and then kind of, my add-ons and stuff. And so I knew every year I was going to raise one of my core service rates and then I was going to, raise some add-ons. And so I just, have my spreadsheet and I did that religiously. And that way I'm not raising everything every year, although that's the approach some of, my colleagues that I had did. They just knew every year everything was going to go up a little bit. So what I say and what I've learned is if you get into that habit of at least raising at least one rate every year, your clients get used to it and there's less pushback. Where people really struggle is they've opened and now 4 years have gone by and I haven't raised any of my rates. I'm losing money because costs have gone up. Mm-hmm. And when you do that calculation of cost plus profit, it's like a huge jump. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't do that because my clients aren't going to pay it. So, and it becomes so stressful that, when you don't raise rates every year and you're not into that, mindset, it becomes very stressful. And what we have found, I've worked with, hundreds of pet business owners on raising rates that most of the time, clients barely notice. And, that kind of also tells you if you get no pushback, you probably didn't raise your rates enough. But yeah. So if you have one or two people complain, you probably hit that sweet spot. And, how much should it be? Again, I would go and do that cost plus profit to make sure you're making money. That's the best way to know. If you, just can't figure that out or don't want to spend the time, then, I would kind of look at your volume and, $1 to, 5% or more, kind of, you want to at least stay with inflation because your staff are going to want increases. Costs have gone up a lot over the last, year, 18 months. So you kind of want a percentage that's going to at least keep you whole, because if you don't raise prices and your costs keep going up, what happens is you as the owner, it's your paycheck that gets smaller. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you want to take your paycheck and give it to your employees and give it back to your clients, you can do that. But most of us didn't start our businesses to give our paycheck away.
That's funny. That was actually one of the things that I had a problem with early on. I really did with raising prices and, like, even though I had been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years, like a little bit of imposter syndrome, like, am I really worth it? Is this, is it that? But then I also, mentorship is so helpful. Like I recommend it for everybody. But I had a mentor of mine, and we sat there and looked at it. And he said, okay, well, inflation is going up this. So if you don't raise your rates at a very minimum, you're taking a 3% cut. And then the cost of goods, like you mentioned, in the last 18 months, if you look at the numbers, they say that inflation is up about 3%, but I can go to the grocery store and I can promise you they're up more than 3%. So, taking a look at that and then understanding all you're doing by not raising rates is giving yourself a haircut for your family and your pets and all that other stuff. So I was okay. And I do it the same way Susan does. Different product lines every year. Somebody gets addressed. Just to get back in good graces with, Visa and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. And, and if you don't, you can not raise rates and reduce your own pay, but what that will lead to is resentment in the long term, because you work so hard, you have so much responsibility as a pet business owner that if you keep cutting your own pay instead of raising rates, and you're just going to become resentful of your business and the joy will be gone. And so, I think sometimes, this is kind of drastic, but maybe, to kind of tie in the marketing piece, if you feel like if I raise rates, I'm going to lose my existing client base because they can't afford it. Well, then, maybe you need to rebrand and change your niche, your target niche, because whatever you're doing is you're not able to do it profitably at that rate. So you may need to kind of retarget who you're marketing to and how you're providing services to reach a higher income bracket that will pay. And I don't know if you have any advice on how a brand can kind of, do that successfully.
Yeah, I really liked what you had said earlier, Susan, about the fact that if you don't get a couple of people that are, that raise their eyebrows about it, you're probably not raising them enough. Whenever I look at them, I always look at it this way: is, as business goes on, people are with us for a long time. At some point in time, there's a certain group that just kind of get used to a certain level of service without necessarily paying for it. They kind of get the group, the group discount. And it's usually whenever we raise our rates, we'll usually notice a couple of those people fall off. But what ends up happening is the people that end up falling off because it's just that extra stretch is just too much for them. Those were the ones that I was spending the majority of my support time with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's just leveling up, just like everybody else is leveling up their skills and their business and all that other stuff. We're just leveling up our pricing to be in alignment with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, good. Do we have anything else?
True. Yeah, I think this is a good segue question for talking about paying. Is someone was kind of curious about, they heard payroll should be 50% or less of revenue.
Oh, okay.
What is included in that number?
Yes, that's another one of our industry benchmarks. And that, reality is to reach that 20% profit, you really do need to keep your payroll at 50% or less. And so when we're looking at that, payroll includes, all the labor for the people that are taking care of pets, and that would include their taxes and benefits. But you also want to include in that, what I call fixed payroll, or the payroll that you're paying for your front desk staff, for any support facility staff, everybody that you're actually paying to support providing services that may not be directly into pet care. Now, and for them, it would also include the taxes and benefits. The biggest question is, do I include my owner pay? Well, it kind of depends. It kind of depends on what role are you serving in the business. If you are actively there, basically being the GM and over operations, and that the business couldn't operate without you, then I would include your pay, because, you're the leader of the team. Mm-hmm. However, if you're an owner that maybe your business is a little more mature, you have a couple of strong managers, and so you're really just there kind of for strategic guidance, and setting planning direction and monitoring things, I would probably pull it out. And then, if you're, I do part of operations, part leadership, then maybe throw in 50% of your pay. But the key thing is to make sure that, the people that are taking care of pets, supporting the operation, stays at that 50% or less.
So if we've got payroll at around 50%, profit, we're shooting for 20%, that leaves 30%. Is that just all operating costs?
Yeah, that would be,
so we need to run everything, all the marketing, everything else like that is going to happen within that 30%.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which your budget would tell you whether that's what you've planned or not, but yeah, and, I think one thing, there was somebody asked about, marketing benchmarks, how much should I spend on marketing? Well, it kind of depends. What is your goal? Are you wanting to kind of just maintain, your current level of business, and fill, clients that may leave? Then you might need to spend 3 to 5% of your budget on marketing, of your revenue that you make. If you're really wanting to grow, and because you have open occupancy or you're fairly new, you may need to spend between 5 and 8%. But if you're brand new or expanding, and you're in a kind of build phase, then you may need to spend 8 to 12% on marketing. And so that's taking a big chunk of that 30%. So in a build expand phase, you may only be able to have a 10% profit. But I think the key is to have some profit. And then once, you kind of get your client base built up, you can then focus on reaching, higher from, 10% to 20% profit. So, business ebbs and flows as you're going through different phases, what you're trying to accomplish. And the numbers have to align with that.
Yeah.
But it seems like it would be really helpful to have that information, at least kind of like guidelines up front. So, okay, in this phase for Q1 and Q2, we know that we're going to have to dip here. So our profit margins may be a little bit lower, but we know in 6 months that's going to move up, so that way there's a plan to it and not just like,
Yeah, exactly. That's why I love budgeting. And we'll talk about that maybe in October, because I could do a whole Q&A session on budgeting, but that's why I love budgets. They tell you that.
And it's also just knowing, right? Like anything, especially with digital marketing, social media marketing, ads, it takes time. So it's the same with budgeting. It's a process. You're moving through it. You have goals, you're hitting goals every month, you're pushing the needle somewhere, but just knowing that it's a process, it's not going to happen overnight, I think is really helpful too. It's like taking the weight off your shoulders that it needs to be perfect overnight. It's just not how it works.
No. So I know we're kind of up against our time, but I really wanted, Mike and Ashley to, share with people, kind of what's new in marketing. What do they need to be paying attention to? I mean, the digital world changes so fast. What's kind of your all's tips for people right now?
I'm going to go ahead and say, be real. Mike and I have talked about this so many times. It's like with AI and everything, yes, it has a place, but at the same time, people don't want to be sold to. They want you. They want your authenticity. They want the connection. And that's how you build trust as well as a brand, is you show up as your expert, you show up as yourself, you show the process, like we said. That's something that I've really noticed is showing up lately, is people don't want to be sold to. They just, if you have a product, you have a service, you have a business that's going to help somebody, share that story. Don't share, you don't have to be anything fabricated or fake. Just share your business and share your truth, and don't always go with AI. People come first always. Like people like people, right, Mike?
People like people. Yeah.
People like people. They can feel it.
They can absolutely feel it. Right. And if I had anything to add to that, I would say something to keep in mind with marketing is, even though there's a lot, I'm sure that if everybody's going to conferences and there's AI talk here and AI talk there, and there's no doubt AI is here and it's going to be here forever, just like email marketing and the internet and all the other things. I don't think it's where it's going to be, but what makes people stand out in AI for the AEO and the GEO, right? Showing up for the 0 clicks in the Google and showing up inside of ChatGPT and Gemini and all that other stuff. It's the same thing that makes good SEO, and that's being honest and doing things right. It takes a little bit longer, but you're never going to get slapped back and have any kind of penalties. The other thing with marketing too is it's a long-term process, right? It's momentum based. So let's say, for example, you had a $10,000 marketing budget. I wouldn't blow $10,000 in January and February, because then your site is basically going to look dead for the next 9 months, right? The search engines, everybody rewards momentum. It would be better to spend $1,000 and be consistent about what that is moving forward. So, momentum based, AI is great for ideation, but the things that make AI that are really going to be meaningful are the same things that make good SEO, which is authenticity, thought leadership, questions that people are actually asking. If you can answer those, you got a pretty good chance.
Well, this was great. I can't believe how fast the half hour went by. So we will definitely do this again. We're glad you joined us. And I just want to invite you, if you want to continue the conversation, if you have more questions, financial that didn't get answered, I have a Facebook group, the Pet Business Profit Lab, that we would love to have you join. Mike and Ashley actually hang out there too, so they may be able to chime in if you have marketing questions and help. But I couldn't do it without my support team. I'm thrilled to be working with both of these for long. And I do say marketing is a long game. But it's worth it because you definitely can build momentum, which helps with growth, which helps with profit. So I always say finance and marketing are kind of like siblings.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if you don't like your numbers, well, you're probably going to have to work on your marketing, and then your marketing will help your numbers if you convert to sales. So they're very closely related when it comes to business. So thank you guys for joining us, and we hope to see you back here soon.
Yeah, we'll see you in the Facebook group, everybody.
Thanks so much. Hopefully another one in October.